Let's move on to the simulation part with the animation. To do so, go to the upper right corner. You have this big button called simulation. I don't have that on my screen, but it's just right above my cursor here. Left click, and change the editor to animation, and it's going to switch to animation. You may have a pop-up says that the simulation quality will be changed to complete. Just hit OK if you have that. What that does is basically, if you right-click in the simulation properties, that's the preset here. You have complete or the custom or the normal one we're using here. It's basically how many substeps you have to make it more accurate. So if it's complete, it's basically a little bit more accurate. So not a bad thing. Anyway, in the animation editor, you have this animation timeline. And from left to right, you have the record, which is how you simulate. Simulation quality, again, you can change it back, change it back if you wanted to. The play buttons, go to first frame, last frame, play, repeat, play speed. You can change that to half of the speed, right? Frame stepping basically will go step by step, or you can change to real time if you think your machine is good enough. Current is the current frame, start and end of the animation, which is the white bar here. Scene time wrap is the play speed, simulation speed. And also the display unit will be the frame per second, and that's the size of the timeline. So basically a very simple system. To start actually simulate, you just hit on this record button, and the simulation will start. Because we have the animation imported from Alembic, everything will go right away. So let's see how it looks like without doing anything. And the simulation is going to take a little while, but this is actually much faster compared to programs like Maya or Houdini. Because if you want to simulate something like this long and with a lot of layers on it, it's actually going to take like almost forever to do one frame. And as you can see, this is basically in a acceptable speed. So this is actually pretty good for a simulation like this. So I'm going to pause the video, and when it's done, we're going to actually take a look and see if there are something we can enhance. So our simulation is done. You can just click on this, go back to the first frame of the animation range, and click on play. Let's take a look. Oh, it's playing too fast. Change the frame stepping to real time. Okay, you can see it's doing a pretty good job actually, but we do have some trouble. Like she's kind of like trying to push the garment around too much. The ending is fun, I guess, but let's actually select one of the garment and press F button to zoom in. Let's take a look. Everything is actually pretty cool, not having that much issue down the way. But we do have some issue in the middle though. Like some of the parts, you can see the arm is actually overlapping with the skirt. Part of the skirt is going up too high, so I'm thinking two things. One is that the skirt can be heavier, right? So they're not going up too much. And the second thing is maybe we can also add some damping, so they're not really being going around that much, and maybe the shear could be also smaller, so it's not being able to do that much of the stretching. So back to frame 1, go to the animation, change that to simulation, so we can do some changes here. Like what I described earlier, right? First thing I want to go for is go to the fabric and select our fabric, and say the density, which is basically how heavy they are. I'm going to double that. So instead of 35, I'm going to go for 70. Now this is all trying, so I'm not sure yet. The internal damping is the damping, right? Basically the strength. Go back to the fabric. Internal damping basically is the strength being applied trying to stop the animation. I can crank that up to maybe 40. Okay, and then maybe I can make it lesser stretchable. So instead of 50, I'm gonna try 70. 70 here, and maybe 22. Okay. And one more thing I can go for, just to make it a little bit more stable, is actually the collision thickness. I'm gonna grab out the garment and go to the add thickness collision, double that number to 5, so that the collision will be bigger and it's gonna be more stable. You can hit space button to resimulate to apply all the changes. Right, let's wait for everything to go back to stabilize. So this part is having a little trouble. Go back to belts, and how about we change that to something like the bending parts. Change that to something lesser to ease that little juggling effect on the edge. And let's see, what else can I change? Maybe just a little bit more lesser than that. Okay, so what else? One more thing in our simulation part, animation part. You can actually change the animation range from 250 to something more than 525, because if you play this animation and take a look at the final, you can see they're not really settled yet. So you can give them some space or some time to settle down. I'm gonna give it 2 more seconds, so it's gonna be 573. So you have that much time to help them settle down. I don't really need the original, the old animation we simulated earlier anymore, so I'm gonna grab it, right click, and say delete. Alright, go back to frame 1, or the first frame of our animation. If your garment is still there, you can control Z, that should bring them back, hopefully. No? Huh, goes back here. It's interesting. Now it's back. Guess you have to just go back a few more. Anyway, make sure that I change my settings back. So about having a little bit lesser bending resistance. Okay, now one of the issues is because we're having too little geometry here. We can actually grab out the garment and change their particle distance to 15 instead of 20. Hit enter. And that's gonna reset or regenerate the geometry with more resolution. That can make this better. Simulate again. You can actually take a look at the wireframe. You can see they're slightly denser. I don't really want to go too high, because if it's too high, it's gonna take 20 or to 30 minutes to simulate, or even more. So I'm not gonna go to that stage yet. Let's go back to the animation, and let's hit on the record one more time, and let's see how this time it behaves. Now I have a problem already, so I'm going to stop this simulation. The problem is because of the weight, the garment starts to stripping down, which is not what I want. Although what's happening earlier is actually not bad. Let's take a look. So this is actually pretty good, pretty stable, but that's just starting to sliding down, so we have to fix that before we move on to more. So here I'm gonna go back to the first frame again, go back to simulation, grab the belt. I can tell it to have more friction. I'm gonna crank that up all the way up to 99 because it's never gonna move. And just to make sure that I get it exactly fixed there, I'm gonna go use the selection here, grab the top guys, right click, create pin, and one more time right click, attach pin to avatar. What this does is basically attaching that to the actual geometry around them from the body, so that way they're basically fixed to that position. Back to the animation, I'm gonna grab this guy, right click and delete. Let me do one more simulation, and this is 11 minutes already, so I'm gonna stop this one. In the next one we're gonna take a look and see if there are more problems that we have to fix.